To become conscious of yourself is not a triumph. It is an exile. The moment you realize you are observing your own thoughts, you are no longer living inside them. You become a spectator of your own existence, like watching your body move from a distance, disconnected from the urgency of the moment. For Fernando Pessoa, this was not merely a psychological condition, but a metaphysical wound. He wrote of life as something others experience, while he watched it unfold like an actor too aware of his role, unable to forget the stage. Self-awareness, in this view, is not clarity. It is a fracture. You become split into two, the one who lives and the one who watches. The spontaneous immediacy of action is replaced by endless reflection. Even joy begins to feel artificial, like something worn rather than felt. Pessoa compared this to a man who reads the manual for dancing while others are dancing, always preparing, analyzing, thinking, but never quite moving in rhythm with life. In your mind, you are both the writer and the reader, the actor and the critic, the creator and the judge. This is not wholeness. It is war. And this internal war is unresolvable. Because the more you reflect, the more fragmented you become. The more you understand yourself, the more you realize you are composed of contradictions, shadows, echoes. There is no single I to return to. And so, you begin to wear masks, not to deceive others, but to survive yourself. You become a character in your own mind, watching your life unfold as if it were a novel you're not sure you're enjoying. Others live by instinct, but you, haunted by thought, hesitate at every turn, wondering if what you are doing is real, or merely something you've convinced yourself to perform. Fernando Pessoa didn't write from a single voice. He created many. Álvaro de Campos, Ricardo Reis, Alberto Cairo. These were not just pseudonyms. They were entire personalities with their own biographies, beliefs, styles, and emotions. Pessoa called them heteronyms, and through them, he revealed a truth that most are too afraid to confront. The self is not one. It is a crowd, a chorus, a shifting, unstable constellation of identities that change depending on time, memory, and mood. For Pessoa, this wasn't a literary trick. It was a necessity. He could not bear to speak from a single identity, because no identity ever felt fully his. One day he would feel the cosmic detachment of Cairo, seeing nature without thought. The next, he would become Campos, the modernist swept by sensation and despair. And then Reis, the stoic who found peace in elegance and passivity. These selves weren't masks, they were mirrors. Reflections of parts within him that could not coexist in one voice. So, he let them all speak. We like to believe there is a true self buried underneath the noise. A singular, authentic core waiting to be discovered if we just strip everything else away. But Pessoa turned that notion upside down. What if there is no true self beneath the surface? What if the surface is all there is? Layer upon layer of changing personas, each one as real or false as the last. This multiplicity isn't weakness, it's reality. And the tragedy, perhaps, is that most people never meet their other selves. They live and die wearing one mask, not knowing they could have been many. This is the terrible beauty of self-awareness. Once you see the fragmentation within, you cannot return to unity. You begin to suspect that your thoughts contradict your feelings. Your memories betray your narrative. Your desires mock your values. And in that space of contradiction, you no longer speak with one voice. You echo with many. We live in a time obsessed with authenticity. Be yourself, speak your truth, find your voice. But Pessoa dismantled that illusion with surgical precision. What does it mean to be yourself when the self is a puzzle with missing pieces? When even your sincerest thoughts feel rehearsed and your most private emotions seem borrowed from a book, a film, a forgotten memory that may never have been yours. The pursuit of authenticity, to Pessoa, was not a path to freedom. It was a trap that leads you deeper into the maze of self, questioning. The more you try to be real, the more artificial you feel. Pessoa wrote, "To pretend is to know oneself." In other words, we become most aware of ourselves not when we are honest, but when we are performing. And this is the paradox. The act of trying to be authentic is itself a kind of performance. You adjust your voice, choose your words carefully. Second, guess your instincts. In attempting to show your real face, you create yet another mask. The moment you declare, "This is who I really am," doubt creeps in. Did you choose those words to be understood or to be admired? Did you say what you truly felt or what you hoped would make you feel true? Pessoa's life was an ongoing dialogue between selves, each one trying to speak authentically, and each one uncovering how fragile that concept really is. He understood that even sincerity is layered. A man writes a poem from the heart, but whose heart? Is it today's self, yesterday's pain, or the version of him that exists only in ink and metaphor? Authenticity, in this light, is not a destination, but a mirage that vanishes the closer you get. The more you reflect, the more you realize that your thoughts are echoes, your choices shaped by invisible influences, your identity a flickering candle in a hall of shifting mirrors. Fernando Pessoa knew that to think deeply is to suffer deeply, not out of romanticism, but as a consequence of lucidity. The more aware you become, the more illusions collapse. What once gave you comfort, religion, love, identity, ambition, starts to look like a carefully staged play, acted out for an audience that doesn't even know it's watching. And when the curtains fall, when self-awareness strips the stage bare, what remains is often a vast and unbearable silence. Pessoa did not flee from this silence. He lived in it, he wrote from it, and he discovered that suffering, though painful, is the birthplace of meaning. Most people avoid inner depth because it threatens the fragile scaffolding of their lives. They surround themselves with noise, with routine, with distraction. But Pessoa stood still in the chaos of thought and let it unravel him. In that unraveling, he found a strange clarity. Not happiness, not peace, but a kind of existential sharpness. His pain became language, his confusion, poetry. He transformed suffering into art, not to escape it, but to dwell more fully within it. In this, he followed a long lineage of thinkers who understood that insight rarely arrives without a price. Pessoa's awareness made him a stranger to the world, but it also gave him a profound intimacy with himself, or rather, with the many selves he housed. It was not comfort he sought, but coherence amid fragmentation. Not escape from pain, but articulation of it. His suffering was not a failure to adjust, but a refusal to accept false answers. In a world desperate to fix every discomfort, Pessoa sat with the discomfort and asked it questions. He knew that only those who dare to descend into the depths of their own mind will ever come back with something truly original, truly human, truly alive. To most, freedom means expression, living out one's desires, being seen, being known. But to Fernando Pessoa, true freedom did not come from acting on impulse or projecting identity into the world. It came from detachment, from the deliberate disconnection between self and experience, observer and act. Not as coldness, but as clarity. He understood that the more tightly we cling to the idea of a fixed identity, the more imprisoned we become by it. In detaching from the need to be someone, Pessoa began to access a kind of invisible liberty, the freedom to be no one in particular, and thus to be everyone. In his poems, letters, and fragments, he often explored the pleasure of watching life, rather than participating in it. He compared himself to someone standing behind a window, watching people pass by, imagining their inner worlds while remaining comfortably anonymous. For most, this would feel like isolation. For Pessoa, it was serenity. He found beauty in absence, truth in ambiguity, and power in stepping back from the need to solidify the self. In the detachment from identity, ego, and emotion, there was no longer pressure to perform. There was only space to think, to create, to dissolve. Pessoa's heteronyms were not just characters. They were the scaffolding for this detachment. He lived through them so he wouldn't be confined by any one of them. In doing so, he exposed the artificial nature of selfhood. He didn't search for his true face. He dismantled the mirror entirely. And in this dismantling, he discovered a rare kind of peace. Not joy, not fulfillment, but weightlessness. The absence of the need to be solid, permanent, or even remembered. A quiet rebellion against the tyranny of self-definition. He did not live to be understood. He lived to understand, from a distance unmarred by certainty or pride. To be self-aware is to stand in the middle of a mirror maze, where every turn reveals another version of yourself. Each one believable, each one incomplete. Fernando Pessoa did not offer escape from this condition. He gave it a voice. A quiet, fractured, poetic voice that did not seek answers, but lived inside the questions. Through his many selves, he showed that identity is not a possession. It is a performance, a shifting mask worn by consciousness as it tries to make sense of its own reflection. In a world that worships clarity, Pessoa embraced ambiguity. In a culture obsessed with being someone, he showed the strange freedom of being no one. His words remind us that to know ourselves is not always to find peace. It is often to awaken an ache that never sleeps, but in that ache lies something real, something luminous. Not a final truth, but a kind of wisdom born from accepting the fragments, rather than forcing them into a single shape. Self-awareness does not complete us, it undoes us. And yet, in that undoing, we may begin to see, not who we are, but what it means to exist at all. Not as a finished story, but as an unfinished sentence, still being written by hands we can't always claim as our own. Pessoa lived at the edge of thought, where silence speaks, and masks reveal. And if there is a lesson to be found in his paradox, it is this: sometimes, to be most alive is to stop trying to be whole, and simply begin to observe, with tenderness and terror, the many lives we carry within.